Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a really big question. What does it actually mean for a country to be developed? Is it really all about the money, or is there a whole lot more to the story? Let's dive in. So let's start right here. You've probably heard this a million times. A richer country is just a better country. But is that always true? I mean, does having more money automatically mean a better life for every single person? Well, as you might have guessed, the answer is way more complicated than it seems. To really get to the bottom of it, we first have to understand that this word, development, well, it can mean totally different things to different people. And that brings us perfectly to our first section. See, it turns out development isn't some one-size-fits-all idea. Not even close. Okay, so picture this. You have an industrialist who wants to build a huge dam. Why? For electricity, for factories, for what they see as economic growth. To them, that's progress, right? But then you have the tribal farmer whose land is about to be flooded by that very same dam. For them, it's a total disaster. This shows us crystal clear that one person's idea of development can be completely destructive for someone else. And look, of course, a decent income is something pretty much everyone wants. But what about all the other stuff that makes life worth living? Things like being treated equally, feeling safe, having freedom and respect. You just can't put a price tag on those things, but they are absolutely essential for a truly good life. So that raises a huge question, right? If everyone's goals can be so different, how in the world are we supposed to compare the development of entire countries? Well, for a long, long time, the go-to measure has been something called per capita income. The idea is pretty simple. You take all the money a country makes, divide it by the number of people living there, and bam, you get an average. Want a single number to compare every nation on Earth. And huge institutions like the World Bank still use this to categorize countries. You can see here, India falls into that low-middle income bracket. The logic seems straightforward. A higher income equals a more developed nation. But is it really that simple? Let's dig into that in our third section. What happens when this one single number, this simple average, starts to tell a really misleading story? Let's take a look at a real-world example from right here in India. Now, if you only look at income, the state of Haryana, with an average income over 2.5 lakh rupees, looks significantly more developed than Kerala, right? But, and this is a huge but, the moment you look at other crucial numbers, the whole story just flips on its head. Despite having less money on average, Kerala has a dramatically lower infant mortality rate and a much higher literacy rate. So I have to ask, which state is really more developed? And this really gets to the heart of it. Money in your pocket alone just can't buy everything you need for a good life. I mean, think about it. A pollution-free environment, access to unadulterated medicine. These are things that depend on the whole community working together. And here's another perfect example of how numbers can lie. Check out these two imaginary countries. Now, technically, they both have the exact same average income of $10,000. But let me ask you, would you be equally happy living in both? In country A, things are pretty fair. But in country B, 4 people are barely scraping by while one person is fabulously wealthy. See? The average completely hides that reality. So all of this naturally leads us to a much better, more complete way of thinking about progress. One that puts human beings, not just money, right at the center. To get that more complete picture, the United Nations Development Program came up with a tool called the Human Development Index, or HDI for short. So the HDI is brilliant because it goes way beyond just income. It also looks at health, which it measures using life expectancy, and it looks at education. So you get a much, much richer picture of what life is actually like in a country. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. When we use the HDI to compare India with its neighbors, some pretty surprising things pop out. India's world rank is 134. But look at Sri Lanka at 78, and even Bangladesh ahead at 129. And here's the real shocker. Even though countries like Bangladesh and Nepal have lower average incomes than India, their people, on average, actually live longer. This just goes to show you that national wealth does not automatically mean better health for all citizens. But hold on. Even this much broader view is missing one final, absolutely critical piece of the puzzle. Can we actually keep this progress going for the next generation? I love this quote. It really forces us to stop and ask a tough question. Is our current way of life actually sustainable? Or are we basically developing today by stealing from our kids' future? Let's make this real. Take groundwater, for instance. Now, it's a renewable resource, but in hundreds of districts across India, we are pumping it out way faster than nature can put it back. This is a massive threat to the future of farming and even just having clean drinking water for millions of people. It really makes you question how sustainable our development is. And the situation is even more critical when you look at non-renewable resources, like crude oil. I mean, look at these numbers. At the rate we're going, the world's known reserves could be gone in about 47 years. The clock is literally ticking, and it forces us to question our whole energy-dependent way of life. So, where does all of this leave us? It leaves us with a massive question. If development is truly more than just money, and if it absolutely has to be sustainable, then what should our real goals be? What does true progress actually look like to you? The debate, as you can see, is really just getting started.